Pastor John MacArthur, what do you think are the significant philosophical differences, put aside sort of the story differences where we accept the first half of the book and not the second half, between Judaism and Catholicism? So aside from Jesus and the acceptance of Jesus, where do you think there are real significant philosophical differentiations?
Well, that's a big aside, though. I mean, that's the heart of the matter. But let me say this first, though, about Judaism and Catholicism. One thing I feel really strongly about is it's the re-Judaizing of Catholicism that is evangelically so important. Precisely when you divorce Catholicism from Judaism, you get these distortions of Jesus so common today. Jesus as teacher of timeless spiritual truth, Jesus as guru, Jesus as Gnostic, master. Jesus is, as Paul said, the yes to all the promises made to Israel. Jesus is the climax to the story of Israel. Therefore, not to know Israel is not to know Jesus. Not to know Torah and covenant and temple and prophecy is not to know Jesus. The very fact, I'll tell you here, this is an interesting thing. So when a Protestant minister comes out to preside at the liturgy, he'll wear either a business suit or he'll wear his doctor robes. Because the heart of the matter is teaching, right? The pulpit, you're going to teach, you're a doctor or a teacher. When I come out, now especially as a bishop, who's a kind of a high priest in the Catholic thing, I come out in the robes of a temple priest, including the mitre of a temple official. I use incense. There's an altar. A sacrifice takes place. The Catholic Mass is unintelligible apart from the temple, apart from Jewish worship. And so to re-Judaize the operation is the key to evangelism. Because the good news that Paul has, and Peter and James and John, is not some Gnostic insight. It's not some change of consciousness. The good news is, the promises made to Israel? God has said yes to all of them. Do you know the great story of Israel? It's from creation to the fall to the formation of the people and Torah, temple, and prophecy. You know that great story? It's reached its fulfillment in Jesus. That's why Paul goes into the synagogues first. So when he comes into Corinth or he comes into Athens or wherever he goes, his first move, of course, is to the Jews, because they'll get the story he's talking about. Talking to Gentiles is a fucking complicated business if you're an evangelist, because the story of Jesus won't make sense apart from Judaism. So there I want to insist upon this deep congruence, and it does have philosophical overtones. The belief in the one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is God alone. That is of enormous philosophical significance. And I would say, it's one more, is what's your name? Moses asking the Lord, what should I tell him? I am who I am. Aquinas reads that, of course, as the one in whom essence and existence coincide. That God is he's being asked, which God are you? There are a lot of gods. Which instance of deity are you? And then the great answer, that's the wrong question. That's the wrong way of thinking about the creator God of Israel. I am who I am. My manner of being is being itself, not this particular instance of being. So that's of enormous philosophical importance coming up out of Israel into the church and then finally into its own philosophical thinking. But I want to re-Judaize Catholicism, because the thing is, in many parts of the Protestant movement, there's a desire to de-Judaize the operation, right? That we've overcome that and we kind of left that behind. Catholicism lifts it up. It doesn't want to leave it behind. That's why the permanence of the covenant made Israel is so important to us. This covenant's not been violated. God can't say no to the great covenant he made. It has permanent validity. And that's important for our theology, for our liturgy.
I was just going to ask you about that, because for a long time, a dominant strain of Catholic thought was replacement theology, the idea that the Jews had sort of been left behind, that the new covenant had been made with the folks who followed the new church. Where does that stand right now? I mean, what does the Catholic Church think of the idea that the Jews have sort of been superseded in history?
We're against supersessionism. We're in favor of, go back to Paul's line. That's the one to me that sums it up. Christ is the yes to all the promises made to Israel. So you won't understand him apart from Israel. He's the fulfillment of Israel. We've been grafted onto the branch of Israel. All of that. That's not supersessionism. It's a fulfillment theology. It's a fulfillment of the covenant theology. But the covenant made to Israel remains a valid covenant for that reason. It's been brought to its fruition. So that's why I'm not going to simply reduce it and say, well, there's no difference, because I'm an evangelist. I mean, I'm a Christian evangelist. I want everyone to know the good news, the evangelion about Jesus. But it's Jesus the Jew. who's the incarnation not of just any old God. He's the incarnation of the God of Israel. He's the God that spoke to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to Moses. That's the one I'm talking about. And he became incarnate in Jesus. So you can't make sense of him apart from Judaism.
So one of the things that, as an Orthodox Jew, I often feel when I speak to people who are either Catholic or Protestant, people who, again, believe in the validity of the Old Testament, but also believe in the validity of the New Testament, is that one of the ways in which differentiation is made is by saying that certain things were lacking in Judaism that are now present in Christianity that had to be fulfilled by Jesus, that without Jesus these things could not have been fulfilled. And I guess that is the question that I'm asking, is where do you see those things? Because very often I hear that, you know, man is a sinful creature and that we need Jesus in order to take on our sins, because otherwise we couldn't live in the world, basically, or that Judaism is not forgiving enough, or not loving enough, or not in favor of atonement enough. And I think as a Jew who prays 3 times a day for atonement, has a full day devoted to atonement on Yom Kippur, has a full month before that devoted to atoning in preparation for the atonement on Yom Kippur, with all of this stuff, I get the feeling sometimes as a Jew that one of the ways that Christians differentiate from Judaism is by miscasting the nature of Judaism. So that's why I'm asking for some specificity.
Here's what I would say, is think all the institutions of Israel, Torah, temple, covenant, prophecy, their purpose is to bring divinity and humanity together, I would say. So Zion, the temple, Yahweh's dwelling place, the tribes go up and they commune through sacrifice, with the Lord. It's the place of encounter. The law is meant to bring us into conformity with the will of God. Yahweh speaks his will. Our wills are off kilter, but they come together ideally through the Torah. The prophets, God speaking, as it were, through them, and they're trying to draw us back to Torah and temple, etc. Covenant, all of it is meant to bring them together. What's at the heart of Christianity is that divinity and humanity have met now perfectly in these two natures. I'm purposely kind of Greekifying the language now, but it's all Jewish talk, translated for Greeks at the time, but it's all Jewish talk. I want Yahweh and his people, Yahweh and Israel, have now met in such a perfect union that I can speak of it as a hypostatic union, as a union of person. The hypostatic union of two natures, divine and human, in one divine person. That's who Jesus is. That's what I mean when I say he's the fulfillment of the temple, the fulfillment of the Torah, the fulfillment of prophecy. What they want has happened now fully in him. That's why, the great scene of the Roman soldier piercing the side of the crucified Jesus, out comes blood and water. The blood of the Eucharist and water baptism is one way to read it, but the other way is the fulfillment of Ezekiel. That at the time of the renewal of the temple, when the Shekinah of Yahweh comes back, what will come forth from the side of the temple but water, life-giving water, for the renewal of the world. And so these first century Jews, looking at Mashiach Yeshua, are saying, look, there it is. In this great act of sacrifice on the cross, now read in temple language, divinity and humanity have met. The atonement's been effected. The covenant's, and the sign of it is the coming forth of water from the side of the new temple. Now, all of it's dependent upon the resurrection. If Jesus Christ had died on the cross and stayed in his grave, none of this would make a lick of sense. Everything I'm saying would be a lot of hooey. And Christianity would just be a waste of time. What got it off the ground was the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, which is what convinced these first century Jews. And I think, of like Rabbi Shaul studying at the feet of Gamaliel, who knew everything I've been talking about and 1,000 things more, when he met the risen Jesus. That's what he got. And it took him a while. He goes off to Arabia, we hear. Paul goes off to Arabia. Where did he go? I don't know. No one knows where he went. But he went away. Then he's in Tarsus for a number of years. What's he doing? I think he's trying to piece it together. He's trying to piece it together. How the promises made to Israel have now been fulfilled in this most unexpected way through a crucified Messiah who's risen from the dead. But when he figured it out, he comes to Corinth and Philippi and finally Rome to announce this new Mashiach, So it's a deeply Jewish movement that makes sense only in that context. When you abstract from it, you undermine its evangelical power.
And so I'm going to ask you in 1 second, one final question. I want to ask you specifically about Jordan Peterson and biblical movements without the Bible per se, without the divinity of the Bible per se. But to hear the